Hey, how's it going guys? My name is Daniel, aka HashLips, and welcome back to my channel where you are going to learn a lot about marketing in these few videos. So yes, like I said, welcome back. The format of these videos are going to be simply conversations. I'm going to talk through my experience, and in this I'm going to point out a few valuable items that you could try when it comes to NFT marketing. Everything I'm going to say right now is from personal experience, okay? And I'm just going to simply talk about what I recommend, and I'm pretty sure you're going to find a lot of value in what I have to say. And so I decided to make a small series where there's short videos on different topics that will help you in the NFT space market your project. So let's jump right into the first topic. And that topic is NFT marketing by talking. What do I mean when I say that? Well, let's take a step back and look at the differences between Web 2 and Web 3 marketing, and actually the communities around them. Web 2 and Web 3, let's quickly look at the main differences, right? First of all, Web 2 is old school and Web 3 is very new. And of course, with that, you have a larger audience with Web 2 than Web 3. Web 3, we're very small, it's a close-knit community right now, and that also is a good thing, right? Because there's more opportunity for projects to succeed in the space. In Web 2, everyone is there. You know, if you release an app, you compete with the whole world. And in Web 3, you only compete with a few individuals with the same goals than your project. But with the different sizes comes a different way of marketing and even thinking about marketing. You see, in Web 2, you can simply put out an advert, and if there's enough people that's attracted to it, the product will do relatively well. However, in Web 3, it's totally different, but for a very specific reason. The Web 3 space currently consists of a very niche community, people understanding the underlying power of the NFT space and the technology behind it, right? And with that being said, you also have various people. You have people here who are interested in making money with trading, people who are here to really invest in art, maybe invest in a project with utility. There's various individuals in the Web3 space, although they all share a similar interest, and that is the NFTs and crypto space, right? They understand that technology, they understand how to work with cryptocurrency and how to acquire some of these pieces. So what does this all mean? And let's now move over and focus purely on Web3. Here you have individuals who understands how to work with cryptocurrencies, MetaMask, how to manage their funds, create wallets, and acquire NFTs. So now we have individuals who understand the technology and they're ready to buy an NFT. However, how do they choose which one to buy? Now, this is where NFT marketing by talking comes in. And you see, here is the big secret. Web3 is still small enough and close-knit enough for the thing word-by-mouth marketing to really work. That means if you have a product, an artwork, or some sort of value that's really enticing and good for a lot of people to start talking about it, and in turn spreading the news about your project. You might say, well, this is a very old school way of thinking and marketing. Well, you have to compare the Web3 space to back when the internet started. It is very new and a small amount of people are actually following this space. So, therefore, this type of marketing absolutely works. Now that we know that you can spread the news about your project or your artwork purely by word of mouth, how do you go about doing that in today's space? Well, I can recommend two technologies, which is Twitter Spaces and Clubhouse. Twitter Spaces and Clubhouse are environments where people get to talk in groups, and there's a stage and there's speakers and listeners. And sometimes the listeners can raise their hand and go on stage and speak to a bigger audience. All you need for this is a mobile device and a Twitter account, and go and search for some NFT spaces. Now, some spaces allow speakers onto the stage to talk to a bigger audience, and some don't. So you really have to play around and find that perfect community to join, and you get to talk about your project, right? And people listen to what you have to say. For instance, if you join the Sketchy Labs community, we host spaces on a regular basis throughout the week, and we invite people to come and talk about their projects. And that is a fantastic way to start talking about what you do with your project so that people can listen in. But there are many spaces like these on Twitter, so just browse through them and find the communities that you want to be a part of and spend your time trying to speak about what you do. The only problem with Twitter Spaces is that hosts sometimes look at the following that you have on Twitter before they invite you to speak. And the reason is the algorithm works best if there's individuals speaking with a lot of followers. Now, as sad as that might sound, if you are someone new and you don't have any following, that is fine. I recommend start with smaller spaces, spaces where there's about 20 individuals in a space. This will give you a better chance to hop on stage and gain a following, and with this method you can go to bigger and bigger spaces and be sure that you will be invited up to speak. And once you have your own following, you can start your own spaces as well and host them, and you can be in control. But let's say you are now on a space. What do you talk about and how do you communicate your project to an audience? And the first thing I want to say is that you need to believe in what you do, whether it's your artwork that you're going to talk about, a project, if you're a community manager, you need to believe in that project with all your heart and passion, because that really comes over in someone's voice when they speak about something. One thing I do recommend to speak about is how your project can add value to someone's life if they acquire one of your NFTs. Of course, different projects don't always have that value. For instance, if it's just an artist selling an artwork, that is fine. The artwork is the value. However, talk about that. Maybe talk about the artist themselves, or if you are the artist, talk about your experience becoming an artist. That is always intriguing for art collectors out there. If you are a project, talk about the utility and how that can maybe be an interesting dynamic for someone to join your project. Another tip for Twitter Spaces or Clubhouse is keep it short, enticing, and ask people to ask questions. That's a great way for normal community members that are listening or on the speakers panel to ask you about your project. And this is a great way to keep the engagement going, and very important, ask individuals to give you a follow if they enjoy what you are talking about or they are intrigued with the project that you are starting. Now you might say, listen Daniel, this is all fine, but what if I'm an introvert and I don't want to speak? Well, it is always best if you can get the courage to speak, but if you cannot speak, then find a friend, find someone that's going to help you host these Twitter Spaces. I promise you, if you join the right community, it is like a family vibe, and sure enough, you'll find the courage to come and say a few words. I know for the first time you might be terrified, but just build up the courage. It's really not that bad, and at the end of the day, what's the worst that can happen, right? No one really laughs at you when you speak, especially if you are in the right community. I've mentioned the community quite a lot, but that's because different projects have different ways of hosting spaces. There's different individuals in the space, and they sometimes take it from a comedic standpoint, sometimes it's very serious, and you just have to kind of figure out what way do you communicate in a space. For instance, you might be in a very hyped up space, and in there, it's fine to shout and go crazy, and maybe talk about what you do as well. But some, spaces are very serious and a lot more informative or educational. And in that space, shouting and screaming might not be the best for the audience listening. So a good tip is to see what the vibe is before you start speaking on a space and try to blend in. A very important thing why speaking on Spaces and Clubhouse and all these wonderful platforms is that it builds trust. When you can talk about a project that you really believe in, and it needs to come from a true place. Let me tell you this, it needs to be truthful. you need to go up and talk about something that you believe in, right? That you are starting. And if you can do this, this will build trust over time and you will gain a following automatically. And talking about followings, the best thing about spaces and talking about your project and others talking about your project is the networking effect. What happens in spaces is that when you talk about your project, and for an example, if your project is in the architectural space and you talk about architecture, someone else might see that, raise their hand and want to collaborate. They might give you a follow and follow up after the space, or even ask you in the space if there's some sort of synergy that you guys can work together. And this is wonderful because you are open about what you do and someone else comes along, and this is where I have personally seen the most collaborations take place is on my spaces. It's where people connect. So the next time I have a space, come and join and check it out. It's always good to practice, and I will never say no to someone who wants to come up and speak. I will always invite you up and hear what you have to say, and that's a great way to start your journey promoting your product. So just to summarize what we talked about in this video is that the Web 2 space and Web 3 space are totally different things, and the Web 3 space is so small right now that word by mouth spreading the news about your project or artwork is totally feasible. Then I also want to say that the networking effect is so brilliant when you do speak about your project and ask people to follow what you do, your cause, your project, and so on. I also want to say that it's important for the owner to himself or herself to speak on spaces, but if you are too afraid to do so, ask a friend, and remember to build trust as you go along in your journey. Your image in this space is very important, and people get to know you for that. And lastly, if you don't know where to start, follow me on Twitter, see whenever I have a space, and come and hop in and join the conversation. I will invite you up and you can talk about your project as well. This is how you can start, and I hope this is a wonderful tip that you can take forward and start growing your project. If you get big enough with Twitter Spaces, you can always host your own as well, and on a regular basis involve interesting conversations and people in these spaces to grow it even further. This is it for this short video, but in the next one I've got another great tip for you when it comes to marketing in this NFT Web3 space. Thank you so much for listening in. Remember to like this video, subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers for now.